Hello everybody, my name is Sue van Winson and I'm part of the sales and marketing team at Ngama Mara. Just a little bit about what we are. We are a safari lodge. We are situated right at the edge of Kenya's Great Rift Valley, overlooking the Masai Mara, 300 meters below. So very special location. We've been open for 4 years, standalone lodge. And today I'm going to chat about what does luxury really mean in today's safaris. And just 2 disclaimers before I get into it. First of all, that I need to confess that I've worked at 2 safari companies in my life, and at both companies the word luxury has been a banned word. I think the reason behind that being that luxury just really doesn't quite do justice to what you're trying to refer to. It can mean so many different things to different travelers. So just to say that, I'm going to use the word a lot in this presentation, but also to say that I do think that there's a big move away from what people perceive as, stereotypically to be luxury. And then secondly, a disclaimer just to say that our CEO, Nikki Fitzgerald, she was pretty much the author of most of the content that I'm using in today's presentation. She put together a presentation just before Ngama Mara opened, sort of to kind of come up with a philosophy of how they wanted to cater for these kind of travelers before they even had a name for Ngama Mara. So a lot of this is her intellectual property, I should say, but yes, and I think it's something with her long history in the industry, having run and beyond for 15 years, she's had a lot of experience at what luxury means for different people throughout the different decades. So just to get stuck straight in here, I'm going to approach the topic from 4 different sides. First of all, I'm going to look at who the luxury safari traveler is. Then I'm going to look at why they are traveling, what their motivation is. And then I'm going to look at what their definition is of luxury. And I'm going to look at that from 3 different aspects. And then finally, what this means for the safari industry today. Okay, so then who is the luxury safari traveler? Of course, I'm sure, as all of you know in the industry, there isn't exactly one type of traveler. This spans across ages, interests, source markets, but I do think that there are definitely some fundamental similarities that we are seeing that are coming through across the spectrum. So just to go into this into a little bit more detail, what I mean is that in terms of the luxury safari traveler, very often safari is not their first trip. This is usually somebody who is well-traveled, sophisticated, discerning, they know what they want. They're looking to fill their emotional needs, and this often comes from a fact that they're feeling like their life is suffering from a bit of a surfeit of stuff. I think we're seeing a big trend towards minimalism in general in today's age, and I think the luxury sector is definitely not immune from this trend. I think people feel like their world is so cluttered that when they go away on safari, they're looking to sort of go back to a time of greater simplicity. Generally, these people, being sophisticated and well-traveled, they also tend to be hard workers, which means they are time poor. And they are often also very classic luxury weary. Just to explain what I mean by that, being well-traveled, they've usually been to all of the big kind of travel hubs of the world, if it be Paris, Dubai, and the likes, and they have experienced a lot of what traditional luxury would mean in the hotel environment. And they're probably looking for something a little bit different, especially because a safari being a completely different kind of holiday for them. They don't want to see that same hotel style version of luxury when they come on safari. They're evolved and highly informed, which also means they're spoiled and demanding, and I've put in brackets there, which is a good thing. I think when we think of demanding travelers, automatically the reaction is to kind of want to run away and flee from the pressure, but the reality is that when people know what they want and they communicate that with you, it's much easier to fulfill their demands. So I think instead of it being something we should be scared of, it's something we should rather view as an opportunity. I've already kind of alluded to this, overworked and overstressed, due to the fact that if they are on a luxury safari, we know it's not a cheap holiday generally, so usually this is somebody who is still kind of in their earning prime and is somebody who has a very busy lifestyle. they tend to be highly influenced by word of mouth. I think there's so much information out there, especially when it comes to online and various media sources. So when it comes to referrals, it's their friends and their colleagues that they're going to trust the most. So this is somebody who's very influenced by that kind of marketing. And something else we should look at is that they often see they are familiar with the system. This isn't the first trip they've booked, which means they are more savvy and they are going to try and find the path to get the best possible value. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have money to spend or they aren't happy to spend, but it's very important to them, even if they have the money, that they feel like they are not being ripped off and they have managed through their connections, through their knowledge, through the people that help them to find a great deal. And also they see the planning of travel as an integral part of the experience. So rather than it being a chore, sometimes for people this is the best part. So it does make sense when you're trying to reach this person to really engage with them at that point of the process. They are wanting to see beautiful itineraries. They're wanting to be inspired. They're wanting to imagine what this holiday is going to be like. And as they're going through their daily grind and their overworked, overstressed lifestyles, this is kind of the daydreaming that they can do, and knowing in a couple of weeks that they'll be going off to somewhere beautiful on safari. Okay, so then next I am going to look at why they are traveling, and the photo I've selected there is maybe a little bit of a clue. Often we are seeing that these multi-generational family groups that are traveling together with their kids, and often this is a product of the fact that their lifestyle means they aren't spending as much time as they would like with their families. So why are they going on safari versus the other options they have available to them, or why are they looking to travel at all? So motivation for them is very much for their hearts to be touched and their souls to be moved. And a desire to get beneath the skin of a destination and fall in love with it. So as we can see, it's a lot of emotional talk. They want to be moved. For them, it is very important that they are traveling not just to be pampered and to experience a very kind of over-the-top experience. They're looking for something to really stir their soul on a fundamental level. This means that it's not going to be a surface level engagement with the destinations that they travel to. They're looking to really share something of the life of the people that live there, which means they want to interact, they want to meet locals, they want to know what life is like for them, the history of a destination, but in a really personalized way that is going to be something that they can identify or relate to. I've already alluded to this in the previous section. There's a longing for simplicity, and I've put there less is often more. So there is a temptation when it comes to these travelers to just kind of lay it all on, but they are just so kind of bombarded in their everyday lifestyle that when they go on safari, they want things to be pared back a lot of the time. Also, why they're traveling, they see travel as a learning experience and not just a holiday, often a learning experience that they are looking forward to sharing with their families and friends and children. And they want to come home with a new appreciation, new ideas, and a broader view of the world. So it isn't just about that kind of traditional, I think they used to talk about sort of fly and flop kind of holiday. This is about really coming away from the trip with some sort of fundamental shift from within. So quite lofty expectations. They want to reconnect with themselves and others, especially their loved ones, which I've already mentioned, and they want to fall in love with the world again. I think all of us can relate to this, whether you're a luxury traveler or not. Sometimes the world just seems like such a fast-paced, such a scary environment that they just kind of want that all to sort of go on pause, and they want to be able to see the world, the planet, nature at its rawest, and just kind of feel excited to be part of that whole system again. This is absolutely key for today's luxury travelers, and I think it's something that a lot of, especially safari operators, are doing incredibly well. These travelers want to feel that they've made a difference and that they've deepened their understanding of their planet, and they want to experience other cultures that seem to have a slower pace of life and a greater emphasis on family and friends. Okay, so next I'm going to start getting into what their definition of luxury is, and I've kind of taken this from three different aspects. The first, looking at adventure, and by this I'm not necessarily talking about bungee jumping or skydiving. This is about that kind of soft adventure that everybody sees a safari trip as. And what do they want out of it? So I think absolutely key to this in our understanding has almost nothing to do with A, the size of the suite, B, the numbers of bottles of wine in the cellar, fine cuisine, or a pillow menu. And perhaps that is our kind of typical understanding of luxury. And yes, creature comforts do form a part of the needs of today's luxury traveler, but by no means should this be the focus. And I think the fact that you are often situated in some of the most isolated, beautiful parts of the world means you need to rather leverage that aspect instead of being fixated on trying to recreate a hotel type experience out on safari. So their definition of luxury in terms of adventure is that knowledge is the greatest luxury. So you need to find ways of involving interpretive experiences into your safari. So that is an opportunity for them to perhaps engage in a real authentic way with cultural communities rather than kind of a sort of zoo-like put on artificial community experience. It also means that your guides need to be absolutely phenomenal. This is often going to be the person that your client is going to connect with more than they do with anybody else on safari. This is who they're going to be spending hours with out on their vehicle. And often that person may come from, if not, they often come from the surrounding community, but at least come from the country that your operation is based. And that gives your clients the opportunity to really get under the skin of what it means to be, you know, speaking from an Ngama perspective, some of our guides are Maasai, and it means they can get a sense of what modern day Maasai life is like, what it means to be Maasai in the 21st century. The definition of luxury for adventure is also about making new friends. I think I've already gone into that. An open arm welcome unhindered by any physical barriers. So it is about that amazing African warmth of hospitality, that amazing service level that we tend to provide. It's about the luxury of privacy and quiet, the luxury of wild and unspoiled places, huge horizons. So for me, this is absolutely the key point here. Your destination in itself is usually what is the very definition of luxury for this adventure traveler. For them, being able to be in a place surrounded by nothing but unspoiled nature, hearing those sounds at night, being able to explore these areas on foot, that is the ultimate luxury, because it is so unlike anything that they would have experienced anywhere else. Also the luxury of choice, tailor-making each moment. I'm going to get into this into a little bit more detail later on, so I won't go too much about that point. And then also the luxury of knowing that just by being there, they're making a difference. I think there is a temptation in today's world. We know that today's guest is very conscious of environmental issues, of community issues, cultural issues, and they want to know that their trip is making a difference, but at the same time, they do not want to have it thrust upon them. So I'm going to actually once again use a quote by our CEO, Nikki Fitzgerald. Something she likes to say is, people are coming on safari to either save their marriage, save their sanity, save their sex life, and only after they've done all of those three things are they going to start thinking about saving the wildlife or communities. So your job as a safari provider is to really kind of make sure that you're providing an environment where they can refocus on the people that they love and also reconnect with themselves before they start being focused outward. And that we find that is very much a natural, organic process that you don't need to force upon a guest. Also the ability to see them for themselves what the operator is doing to promote sustainability. So yes, this is something that they will start to notice. So whether it's just the glass bottles instead of plastic, and little details that they'll probably notice for us when we're out on our safari picnics in the middle of the Mara, they'll notice that nothing's wrapped in plastic and all our bottles are reusable or wax paper, and it's all kind of part of the sustainability journey that underpins most ecotourism safari providers. So next I'm going to look at what their definition of luxury is in terms of accommodation. And I think this is where in Africa you see such amazing variety and everybody does it so well. So this is kind of just our approach to things from an Ngama Mara perspective, not necessarily true of everybody across the scope in Africa. But what we decided to do was take a kind of more pared back approach to our luxury offering. So for us, the fewer guests the better, sense of intimacy even in shared areas. This is something we try to recreate. So for example, at Ngama we've got 2 separate camps with 15 tents in each, and that way you are never sharing a guest area with more than what that can accommodate. So that sense of intimacy and privacy becomes so important. Also just the right amount of furniture. as Nikki has said before, why block a beautiful view with an overstuffed sofa? Everything is about location in Africa, so don't detract from that with too much stuff. It's the luxury of experiencing what it's like to sleep in a beautiful tent. So for those of you who have been lucky enough to experience a luxury tented safari, it's very much about that sense that there's nothing between you and the nature around you other than canvas. And it's all those sounds, it's the rustling of the canvas, it's the sounds of the hyena at night that makes it so special. The luxury of a private veranda, a comfortable chair and a beautiful view. At Ngama we talk about our red rocking chair safaris. Nothing better than sitting out there watching the Mara below with a cappuccino and perhaps a great book. And for us it's the luxury of a custom stocked personal bar, which speaks to that personalization thing, which I'm going to also get into more detail as we go on. Next, I'm going to talk about what is their definition of luxury in terms of food. I think we all know that there is such a movement in terms of food, whether it's most people love trying new cuisines. Also, there's also a lot of people that have special dietary requirements that need to be taken on board. But I think this is a critical aspect. I think most people, when they go on safari, it's the expectation that they are going to at least come away with an extra kilo or 5 or 10 to lose, because everybody associates it with non-stop eating. And yes, at Ngama Mara, of course, it's no different. For us, we see that the focus needs to be on local produce. You need to find creative ways of championing local ingredients in a way that is not too scary for guests, but at the same time gives them a chance to try the flavors and preparations they might not have had before. It's also the luxury of serving guests their food wherever and whenever they feel like eating it. So when you're talking about right at the high end of the safari spectrum, these are the kind of people that have often had amazing fresh croissant at the Georges V in Paris. So we're not going to try and do a croissant in the middle of the Mara that is going to be the same as that, because you're going to fall flat on your face. For us, we would rather make an amazing crusty sourdough bread baked by our local chefs, and serve that with amazing guacamole and kachumbari, which is a Kenyan salsa, so that you are creating something that you can create, but then you serve it up in an amazing location. So the challenge is to try and make sure your guests never have to eat in the same place more than once if possible. So whether that's eating out picnic style on safari, if it's under the stars at night, or in a wonderful private dining experience in their own tent, you need to try keep it exciting and serve it in amazing locations that'll be unlike anything that they've experienced before. I've put their luxury dining under 1,000,000 stars. For us, also the importance of being fed by a chef whose only concern is what you want and not with their own creative flair. I think there's a huge amount of ego sometimes in the industry that floats around the culinary side of things, and that can sometimes get in the way of what the guest really wants to eat. So out in safari, that needs to be, first and foremost what they want, and then obviously there is an opportunity for the chef to bring in some of their own personal style. Also the luxury of delighting guests with local dishes and in traditional ways, the luxury of sharing a meal with newly made friends, swapping stories and adventures of the day, the luxury about not having to make any decisions about what to eat, and then the luxury of the unexpected surprise. So these are just a couple of ways that you can look at making the food concept a little bit more exciting. Next, I'm going to look at what this means for the safari industry. So something that I think is so important is and it's something you have probably maybe heard from clients at some point, give me something I can't Google. The biggest threat, I think, to the industry, the traditional travel channel, is of course the constant online threat. And where you can really make a difference in terms of safari is to really tailor make an experience for them that is something they won't be able to find somewhere online. Which means you need to be innovative and knowledgeable about destinations. Things need to be emotionally driven and focus purely on the guest's real needs. Means taking risks sometimes, getting them to maybe putting them at a property that you just think they would absolutely love, even though perhaps what they've told you, they want something more traditional. Sometimes you should feel free to kind of shake it up a bit, but at the same time, what is absolutely key is that it's personalized and tailor-made. And I think what we're all guilty of a little bit in the safari world is that there are so many different players down the channel that by the time the guest arrives, your client arrives at the safari lodge, they've probably filled in a form with all kinds of personal information at that point, you know, dietary requirements, things they love to eat, things they hate to eat, their favorite cocktail. But with so many players, sometimes that information is not being fed through to the lodge. And the problem is, as soon as the guest has filled out that form at some point in the journey, there's an expectation that those things are going to be taken into consideration, and rightfully so. So it's really about that agent having a personal relationship with a lodge where they feel like they can drop an email or pick up a phone and say, listen, I'm sending these guests there. Just want to make sure that you know that every night they really love a bowl of fresh chili on the table, or that if you can wow them at 6 p.m. with surprise gin and tonics in their tent, that's exactly going to tick their boxes. So it's making sure those little touches are being fed all the way down the chain to make sure that the guest feels like by the time they arrive, everybody knows they're coming. From a Ngama perspective, we have lodges, because we're standalone, we're often part of an itinerary, which means we have to work with other lodges in the area, and we've got a great open communication where we will communicate with our partner properties about the things that guests loved at Ngama that they can surprise them with when they go on to their next destination, wherever that may be. One-on-one interaction. They want to meet community members. Don't hide your team and staff behind a curtain. That is often what they leave with. The memories that are the most memorable are the friends that they made along the way, and that you need to offer more than a bed. So essentially, that's in a nutshell what I wanted to discuss about the safari industry. I'm here. I would love to take any of your questions. So please feel free to type those in the box, and I would love to chat about this a little bit further. Cheers.